We gotta bless the show before we get started. Let's go. When I was in my mother's womb, I had a calling on my life to do something in the glory of God and marry it like a wife. Commit myself to his word and never be led astray. And when it's all over, when he comes, I'll be glad to see that day in the morning time. All right, good evening and welcome to the Farron Dozier Show on KCAA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also streamed from the KCAA Red.com website, the station that leaves no listener behind, and the Military Broadcast Radio Network. That's right, MBR, on all the social media platforms, plus on Roku. Again, thanks for tuning in. If you are in the Inland Empire and you got to get out of your car, grab your device, type in kcaradio.com, click listen live or watch live, and you can catch us streaming right now in the studio. Or you might catch this on the repeat. Either way, we appreciate you for hanging out with us. Tonight, always a spectacular, important show for you. Shouts out to my Sports Collective crew. They'll be back in another week or so. But yeah, what else? Let me see where I want to start at. I'm not by myself today. I have a special guest in studio here, Luis Reyna. We're going to get into some of his background. He is a veteran. So for my Trench Talk segment, for those of you who listen to that part of the show, we're going to get into that conversation with him. But guess what? He's going to stay the whole show. So we're going to go all the way back from before, during, and after his military service. And you'll get to know him. And ultimately, the conversation is for the relatedness, right? A lot of times people, I know I was taught in the military that civilians don't understand us. And so in my transition out of the service, I don't understand Farron. So how can I put that much pressure on you to try to understand me when I don't understand me? So what I discovered for myself is the relatedness. If we can have a relatedness conversation, that opens up the door to have, further dialogue, right? Until we can get to know each other and maybe realize that we're not much different as people, because we're not. We're human beings first, right? And so that's that part of that show that's important for me. Is even why I do this conversation. Let's see. Let's start with my ABA basketball team, the Ventura County Orcas. We are 0-3. Yes, we are 0-3 right now. Man, we lost that last game by 3 points. Such a heart-wrenching loss, but shouts out to my players and shouts out to the coach and the GM. But we picked up some bigs, so we got some bigger bodies on the court with us now, and I feel sorry for those who we come to play in the future. We have 3 games in December, 1 home game and 2 away games. So if you want information about the Orcas, just make sure you go to orcasaba.com. You can catch us over there at orcasaba.com or also on the Instagram at orcasaba. It is an ABA basketball team. However, I wanted to have a brand, right? So we talk about a lot of mental health, mental toughness, life skills, listening skills for our community, our fan base, which is elementary, middle school, high school students and their parents. And so we want to make sure that we take care of that next generation of basketball with some mental toughness and some conversations. So make sure you go check us out over there. What else? Man, make sure you put your mic up. And yeah, that's your mic there. Turn it on right here. Pull it up closer to you. Don't be shy. All right, man. Let's do this. Introduce yourself real quick. Just let them know who you are, and then we'll get started.
Hi, my name is Luis Reyna. I'm local here from San Bernardino. And current member of our California National Guard. I'm a medic here with the 185 out of San Bernardino.
Ooh, we're going to have some conversations, boy, tonight.
Yes.
All right, so we want to play some of our PSAs and our Call Me Go. If you're not familiar with Call Me Go, it is a device that helps breathing, right? Panic attacks, stress. I know I dealt with that anxiety. Still have to manage it. But for a lot of us veterans, we don't want drugs. We don't want medication. We want, natural stuff.
Right.
And so for some people don't realize that if you can control your breathing, you can calm down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so let's play this PSA by our sponsor, Comigo. This is the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio, 106.5 FM, 250 AM, and MBR.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Comigo. Comigo is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Comigo decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Comigo.com to learn how you can get Comigo through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
All right, again, and welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and the Military Broadcast Radio Network. We still down with them, y'all. Make sure you catch me on MBR too. Trench Talk US is going to be on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Yeah, we'll talk about why I unseparated the show. But yeah, so you can catch me here on Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific Time on KCA Radio and also on MBR Radio Wednesdays at 4 p.m. All right, man, you ready?
I'm ready.
You sure?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, so again, this is one of my conversations that's most near and dear to my heart. Trench Talk started off as just an idea, just being, I want to say, from basic training, just being out, meeting people from all walks of life. Back then we was digging foxholes, yeah. Right? So the trenches and all that, and so it just popped in my heart one day, like Trench Talk, and it was just, we'd be up all night just talking and laughing and going on and stuff. So nice. I never knew what it was going to turn into, but when I was medically retired in 2013, turned into a talk show. Back then it was internet radio. Yeah. Now it's podcasting. It got all kind of names today. But so I use that conversation. That's my own personal therapy to stay connected to my veteran community. Nice. One of the most things that we hear that we miss is that camaraderie. Yes. Right. Like that is an instant connection for when veterans, meet one another. It's like you're just instantly connected. So for you, what was going on in life before that choice to join the military? What was going on?
Well, in those very close years to when I enlisted, I had gone through a separation. Okay. I was married for about 7 years. Had one beautiful daughter. And, unfortunately, life sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want it to.
For sure.
And so I was going through that transition. I was trying to get back on my feet, trying to work and raise my daughter. It's very challenging, especially as a single father, with a special needs daughter too on top of that. Yeah. And in trying to figure things out, her my daughter's physical therapist, he is a physical therapist in the National Guard. Okay. In the Army National Guard, and so he was talking to me about those opportunities and about enlisting and considering that as an option for to kind of redo my foundation in life. Kind of provide some stability for both myself, for my daughter. Have those opportunities for personal growth and just, reinvent myself, relearn.
Is a divorce off limits? Because I just want to just from your perspective, not
really, no.
So that I'm divorced as well, so I could definitely relate to you in that. But from being from the male's perspective of that, I learned for myself how I even start to heal from that was to take some responsibility for my part of that not working. Mm-hmm. Were you able to do that for yourself to kind of free yourself from that?
It was rough at first,
Yeah.
because I had no direction. I had no, I myself come from a broken family, so it was just, one of those things where I was just figuring it out on my own.
Yeah.
A lot of my male older role models that I had that by that point had already passed away or moved far away, and so it was challenging for
Yeah.
sure.
And if you don't mind sharing, your daughter, you said she has special needs. We want to know, can we share what she's
Yeah.
managing?
She is dealing with the hypotonic cerebral palsy. It's a genetic disorder where the symptoms mimic autism and hypotonic cerebral palsy. It's Bainbridge-Roper syndrome is her diagnosis. And so, she's on the smaller side. She's on the petite side, still non-vocal. As far as mobility, we in recent years have hit a lot of those milestones where now she's walking independently. She can get on and off the bed on her own. She's bridging those gaps in communication, with signals and letting us know certain cues that we've picked up on. And so potty training just recently happened within the last 2 years.
And how old is she now?
10.
10?
10, yeah. And but when it comes to electronics, when it comes to problem solving and puzzles, I mean, she is brilliant.
Yeah.
Started working with her critical thinking skills at an early age when she was a baby, and now this girl, she can work electronics almost better than I can.
Hey, I got a 5-year-old grandson, and I can tell you what, I think when he was 2, he was doing the iPad.
Yeah.
So they're born for their generation, as all of us.
Right.
I believe we're born for that era that we're born into.
Yeah.
You said it's genetic. So is that something that
we're not sure yet. I know I'm coming up on a genetics testing in January, I believe. Will be my screening. I know her mom was already screened, and she came back negative as a carrier for that. But this genetic disorder is brand new.
Wow.
It was discovered in 2013.
Wow.
There are very limited reported cases worldwide. Hers happens to be one. And so we've got a great team of doctors that we're working with. Not really doing, the medication route.
Yeah.
Thankfully, everything we've done for her has been on the natural side.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've had great success up to this point.
Wow.
And so, my heart definitely goes out to some of the other cases because her mom and I belong to these parent groups.
Yeah, for sure.
For kids with the similar disorder. And, we see cases that are a lot more severe. We see cases that are a lot less severe. And so, to kind of see where we're at and how blessed we are,
Sure.
for sure.
I can definitely, again, I hope listeners, if you could self-examine your life, a lot of our families deal with, types of afflictions. I'm going to go spiritual on you if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
We're all born for a reason,
Right.
right? And spiritually, those afflictions, that we're born with, I have an inherited gene myself, sickle cell trait, and I advocate for communities of chronic illnesses. So you fit right in my conversation of, if we're born for a reason and those afflictions draw us closer to God, right? As a father, like, how did you feel or dealing with that, having a child born with a chronic type of illness?
It's a little bit bittersweet.
Yeah.
You take life as it comes to you, and being a man of faith myself, it's God doesn't give us anything that we can't handle, that He hasn't prepared us for, or that He's not willing to hold our hand and walk us through. And these are just some of the challenges of life. My daughter is definitely a blessing, and despite her not being what you would consider a neurotypical child, she's special in her own way. We have a great relationship. We have a great bond, and we make the most of life that we can.
Yeah. And for those of you who are fathers, this is something that us as men, we really need to be able to open up and share these kind of conversations. A lot of times as men, we suffer in silence, right?
Mhm.
And like trying to find people to talk to that can connect with us and things like that. So I speak from the male's perspective because I've went through a lot myself, and God has delivered me from a lot of things, and I'm still working on stuff and
And it's
coming out of
hard.
my own.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the bigger challenges for me, was finding help. Here I find myself in a situation where, it initially was about 70 to 80% of the time, I'm raising my daughter,
Yeah.
and doing it on your own, doing it in a community that doesn't really know, seeking for help. It's just one of those things that as men, it's really hard for us to kind of, pull our pride aside
Yeah.
and look for that help. And I was grateful that Loma Linda Children's Hospital reached out and said,
Oh
hey,
yeah, Loma Linda.
we have,
That's a great blow. Yeah.
yeah, it's a good local,
Yeah.
and so they had a parent study group for kids with autism.
Oh.
And so they reached out, and I was a little apprehensive at first because I'm like, oh, these parent groups, I don't know, but
Yeah, they can be risky.
yeah, but it was probably one of the better decisions
Yeah.
early on. Definitely broke me out of my shell, broke me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
I met a lot of amazing parents through this group, a lot of amazing kids, and learned a lot about what community resources are available.
Yeah.
Learned a lot about the Inland Regional Center, which is our local big help for parents in that way. And it was a blessing. It was a blessing, and definitely, to any parent out there, it is the hardest step to take, but it is once you've done it, it is so much relief and pressure taken off your shoulders.
Yeah. I know. I can imagine. My daughter has the trait, and I have a family member with sickle cell, but I can only imagine when I look at my own life, right? Because with my own afflictions and my own health deteriorating, it's like sometimes that defines us, right? And I almost put on that jacket of I'm a disabled veteran,
Right.
like where I was gonna sell my motorcycle. I have to, I can't do nothing anymore, right?
Yeah.
Did you kind of help your daughter manage through that? Or
Yeah.
How do you?
I've always encouraged her and worked with her to try and give her that independence, that strength. I'm not a believer in baby talk.
Yeah, nah.
I talk to her like I talk to a regular adult,
Yeah.
and even though her communication back is limited,
Yeah.
I will have these full-on grown conversations with her.
I like that.
And and I know she gets the humor.
Yeah.
She definitely gets the humor. She'll laugh, and she understands.
Yeah.
She definitely picks it up, and and just those words of affirmation. Calling her as the big girl that she is,
Yeah.
not so much the baby talk.
For sure. And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate you. This is the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio and MBR platforms. Again, Louis Reyna is here. That's that community outreach. That's so important that no one escapes it. I mean, no one escapes it. I've had friends who, went through life and didn't have anything wrong, and all of a sudden now they got health issues. I don't think anybody really escapes that, right?
No.
And so just being able to find that community of people, I call it not swim in denial, right? But
Right.
but you also got to be careful, like you said, when those diagnoses come up on us, like don't let your mind go there, right?
Right.
Because your mind will go there, and then that's going to be a whole nother dark space
Yeah.
to kind of get out of.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's easy to get angry, to blame life, or to blame God, or to blame yourself, and and even though anger is a necessary step in coping.
There's nothing wrong with anger,
There's
being
nothing
angry.
wrong
There's
with
nothing
anger,
wrong with it.
But let it motivate you into a positive
Yeah.
instead of drag you down into a negative.
No doubt. Appreciate that. We're going to play some sickle cell trait platforms. If you want more information about sickle cell trait, make sure you go to wdconsct.org. That's my foundation. That's my organization that I advocate for, and we'll talk about that later on. But this is the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Shout out to What's the Count.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Hey, I'm Sergeant First Class Farron Dozier. I'm here at the military base, and I have the sickle cell trait. Now, why I got involved is I experienced what they call sickle cell trait exertion. And I was doing the Army physical fitness test, the 2-mile run, and when I got done, I collapsed. A lot of soldiers and athletes have been dying at football fields and running track, and the family members have no idea that they have the sickle cell trait gene or that it's a trigger. So my purpose is to mobilize the community so we can find out what's in your genes. How will life be if we could prevent another child from being born with sickle cell trait or disease? And if a child was born with the trait or disease, that the family members would have the education, awareness, and resources in every city that they lived in. So tune into our webinar series and find out what's the count. What's the count? What's the count? What's the count? Welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM, and the Military Broadcast Radio Network. So we've been talking to Louis about some outreach, the before service, and his daughter, man. So again, thank you for sharing your life in that aspect of it. So let's get into this military choice.
Yes.
Out of all the branches, you chose the National Guard. What was the process in that?
It was a little bit challenging. I decided to enlist right at the peak beginning of COVID. At the very young age of 29.
You still had some time.
Yeah. Well, not at basic. Everybody considered me ancient.
Oh yeah, you was
point.
old.
Oh yeah,
you was old in basic.
But yeah, I had talked to my daughter's physical therapist, and he played a very compelling argument. It seemed like a great idea for me at the time.
Yeah.
So I came down to my local recruiter's office here at the 185, where I'm stationed at now.
Yeah. And
it, spent a few days talking with the recruiter. It was not a spur of the moment decision, for sure. It was definitely something that was thought out and planned for, and I had to definitely study the ASVAB book because it had been a long time since I'd been in school.
Yeah. At age 29.
Yeah.
Like 10 years or so.
Yeah. It was a good experience. Experience, yeah. Went through MEPS. That was interesting. That's when I took the ASVAB and I passed. The recruiter came and talked to me, and he was like, "Are you sure you want to join the Army?" This was my fault for definitely not doing my research ahead of time. I did not know, and forgive me for all you Air Force people out there, I did not know the Air Force had a National Guard component.
Oh, yeah.
I thought the only National Guard was Army
Yeah, they have
National Guard.
the Air National Guard.
And so they were like, hey, you scored high enough. Like, you sure you want to do Army? You can go Air Force. And I thought about it, and I talked to the recruiter, and I'm like, well, is it a simple process to... He's like, no, you would have to go talk to a recruiter for the Air Force and then redo your appointment with MEPS and retake the test and pretty much start all over again. And I'm one of those people that, even though I'm a business major, I hate paperwork. So I was like, you know what? I'm already here. I've already started the paperwork for the Army National Guard. Let's do it. Let's just
get it going. Yeah. I'm ready to go. You was ready to go.
I was ready to go. I didn't want to waste any more time.
Wow.
And so I signed my contract October of 2020, and in March of 21.
Oh my goodness. That's pandemic. They were still taking recruits in the pandemic.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We all were wearing masks and standing 6 feet apart at MEPS, but they were still taking a good number of recruits.
I know for me, there was one point, I think it was like 3 weeks into basic training, and we had did some maneuvers that day. I think we got smoked, that day pretty bad. And I was laying in my bunk. I was on the top bunk, and my mind, I was like, what am I doing here? Right?
Yeah.
And then when I asked myself that question, it was like my brain clicked, and I was no longer a civilian. It became like the soldier mindset. Everything became a routine, and it was just like, I felt like life shifted. Did you have one of those moments at all? Or no?
Yes and no. Not in that sense, mainly because I was already a little older. I already had some life experience. I knew that, what I was getting into was not going to be easy. Yeah. But I also understood if I do what I'm told, when to do it, how to do it, so I already had that mentality.
Okay.
It's like, I'm here to get a job done, and the drill sergeants are the ones to instruct us on how to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So as far as that, I didn't have so much of like an epiphany moment.
Yeah.
But I did have one moment, which was about the same time, 3 to 4 weeks in. It was in March, the end of winter for Oklahoma, and we're out there in the field. 5 o'clock in the morning, grass is frozen. We're in shorts and t-shirts. And, laying there in that frozen grass, just hoping for the sun to come over the horizon. I was like, what am I doing here?
Oh, there it was. There it was, yep.
But, and at the same time, being on the older side, I realize I'm not the only one here.
Yeah.
We're all going through this together.
Yeah.
What can I do or say to just shift that mentality? And so I've always been pretty witty. So the first thing that comes out of my mouth was, man, this is the worst summer camp ever. And at that point, it's like the whole energy shifted. People are laughing. I mean, to the best of our ability to not, make such a ruckus. But, and from that point on, it became easier.
Let's touch on that, because most of us joined when we were like teenagers, right? And I think we did have a couple of guys that was in their 20s, close to their 30s. How did you deal with that?
It was rough. There was a handful of us that were older than 26. And so we were considered the old guys. The hardest part was dealing with the immaturity of the younger guys.
Yeah, for sure.
And a lot of these younger guys, they're coming right out of high school. They're peak physical condition. They're runners. They're football players. They're soccer players. They're baseball players. So to them, 1,000 push-ups in a day is nothing. But to us older guys, it's we're out there huffing and puffing. And so that was probably the hardest part, was getting them to understand that you have to grow up.
Yeah.
you have to take this serious. That we're not civilians. Mom and dad aren't going to come to the rescue. There's no one.
Exactly.
You signed up for this. You got to get it done.
Yeah.
So
Of all the job skills, you picked medic.
I picked medic. Yes.
That means you went to Fort Sam Houston.
Yes.
Woo!
In the summer.
Woo!
Yeah.
So I too joined the National Guard first, to become a medic.
Mm-hmm.
But we was in the last 2 weeks of the AIT, and I played flag football for the company, and went out for a pass, and got tripped up with the guy that was guarding me, and I had a concussion, hit the ground, concussion. So I was unable to finish. So they called my unit like, hey, he's a holdover, medical hold. You guys got to we're going to send him back home, or you got to find another job, after I heal.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to Fort Lee.
Okay.
But I was at Fort Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. That's all I could say.
Yeah, it's an experience. I've never been in so much humidity in my life. I don't think I'll ever go back.
No? Not even to the Riverwalk?
Not even to the Riverwalk.
Oh,
no,
come
it was just
on.
too hot. Well, maybe not in summer.
Yeah.
Maybe spring. We'll see. But yeah, I mean, it was a wonderful experience. The people that I went there with, amazing, amazing people. You make these lifelong friendships, partnerships. Sure. And I have friends all over the world now that otherwise I would have never met.
Yeah. That part of your career, what's like the most memorable thing that you would say you remember from that?
Well,
that phase?
from AIT, from basic, the camaraderie, building those relationships. It was rough, but I do believe that it was not as psychologically challenging because of COVID being so rampant. The Army still trying to figure out what regulations to put in place, and drill sergeants with masks are a lot less intimidating.
Right.
Than, when they're in your face, 6 feet away from your face.
I can't even imagine that. Yo.
It was a very unique time and experience for
and
sure.
You survived that,
and I survived it. Being in a room with 62 other guys, praying to God nobody got sick with COVID because you didn't want to catch it, and then not only that, but not so much in basic, but when I got to Fort Sam, refusing the vaccine.
Whoa.
That was a challenge. I was part of that handful of medics that just stood their ground and refused the vaccine.
Really?
And I stood on the side of genetics, and so that was my argument.
Yeah.
With these majors and colonels that would try to convince us and talk to us and counsel us, and it's like, no, I was like, I understand the science. I was like, you're not going to argue with me on the science because I understand the science. Like, I'm not going to put something in my body where later on down the road I will become ill-compatible to my daughter if we ever decide to go down the route of gene therapy.
Ooh, that's a hard stance.
Right. And
ooh, and we say family first in the military too, huh?
Yeah.
Ooh, we live by that too.
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that.
Almost cost me my career right out of the gate with the military on several occasions. Even when I got to my home unit, it was still because they were still mandating it. They were still, you have to get it done, and I'm like, well, I'm not going to. And unfortunately, it took for them to present me my discharge packet. For me to really
consider
give in, and it's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm doing this for my daughter, and I need to provide some stability. I can't afford to be kicked out of the Army. Which is what the threat was.
Yeah.
So literally, gun to the head, had to take the COVID vaccine.
Wow.
And then for a few months later, for it to no longer be mandatory.
Yeah.
So it was
that whole
big challenge.
COVID era, man, for us to go through that and live through that. Did you ever end up having COVID or no?
I did.
Yeah,
I did, and I have
had
to
it,
say that it's unfortunate to those that had it very severe.
for sure.
I was fortunate enough that I've had flus and colds that were worse.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know that everybody experienced different things. I know people lost family members.
Yeah,
because
for
of
sure.
it.
Yeah.
So I don't downplay the severity of COVID.
No, we don't. Yeah, not at all.
But at the same time, the same way that a virus affects one person different from another,
Right.
vaccines should also be tailored from one person to another. You
Yeah.
can't have this
Across
herd
the board.
immunity mentality. One vaccine fits all.
Yeah, I got my issues with that too because my health changed after I got the Johnson and Johnson.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. I had Moderna.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my health. I know my health changed.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I it was a choice. My grandson was very young, and everybody was getting it done. And I had the quarantine before I could, all that stuff. And it was like, you know what? Let me just,
Yeah.
cause I want to be able to watch him and take care of him and things like that. So that was my. I had a lot of reasons, but I made a choice, right? So if you don't understand the difference between a decision and a choice, is if you make a decision, is based off a reason, and if that reason doesn't turn out like you think it should, you defend that reason,
Right.
and you get stuck. A choice allows you to choose and then choose freely because it wasn't for a reason. So when my health shifted, I wasn't mad at my choice, but I do know that my health definitely was impacted by
Yeah.
that choice.
Yeah.
And thank you again for sharing that part. Getting to your unit as a National Guardsman and being a medic, what was that integration like?
It was a shock. I got to my unit in September of 21, October of 21. And the day that I got to my unit, I was handed a deployment letter. It's like, we're going to Poland for a year. And then that became a tough decision to say, yes, I will follow orders and go on this deployment with everybody.
Your daughter.
No, I have to stay home because my care plan isn't
'cause
up
your
to.
family yes.
So it was a tough decision to make, because here I am brand new to the unit and they're going on a deployment, which, you want to build that trust. You want to build, that
That's what we signed up
familiarity
for.
with your unit, right?
Yeah.
It's what we sign up for. And then not being able to fully commit to that was very difficult.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I was fortunate enough to be a part of the rear det, got to work with that team, and made a success out of it.
Yeah, for sure.
There's still work to be done here.
For sure.
And then I learned, not everybody goes on that deployment.
Yeah.
It's those that are able to, those that can make the commitment to be gone for that long.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of opportunity, especially with the Guard, that there's that flexibility, thankfully.
People don't realize the Guard changed. We used to just be, when I joined, it was just state emergencies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now the Guard is, we get called
every which way.
For everywhere. Again, and thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about some mental toughness before we go to this first break. How important is mental toughness to you?
Very. It was one of those things that I developed as I was going through boot camp, as I was going through AIT, having to dig deep, and the fact that I had gone through such a hard period before enlisting.
Right.
That is the hard times that I went through on that, the negative experiences that I went through with that, fueled my drive to push through any physical and mental obstacle that I had.
I like that. Because sometimes, especially with divorce, people, like you said, my parents weren't married, but I seen my mom go through divorce, mine twice. It's like that's a hard part of life.
Yeah.
When you don't go into a relationship thinking that that's going to happen.
Right. Right.
But so much of that emotional charge, I don't even know how to say it to you right now, but I just know that I had to really, most recently, the last 5 years, just go and just dig, self-discover, and get free from the first 40 years of my life.
Yeah.
Like literally, I
Yeah.
just had to go back and challenge my religious beliefs, my ideology, my philosophy, and my theology. Like at 40, I challenged all three, and I found new all over, brand new stuff that fits me of who I am today, and it helped me heal in all those different aspects of my life, and I'm so grateful for that and what God has provided for us. If you utilize those principles, a lot of those principles, and they're in therapy. I took cognitive behavior, I took personal development, and I use the word, and I use all three. Yeah. And but I filter all of it through what God has to say. That's where I'm at today. Is I use the mental health, the personal development courses, the grievance classes that I took from the VA. All that gets filtered through what God has to say, and 100%. God's views is way better than mine, and way better than what the world has to say about life experiences. And so, for me, I had to go through that process. Mental health for me is very important. I have sickle cell trait. I collapsed based on AIT. No, I'm sorry. I collapsed at ANOC, working my master sergeant rank, and at Camp Roberts, and in 2006.
Wow.
And I had no idea that sickle cell trait could have those kind of complications. The Air Force Base found it. I was transferred to Michigan, so I did a physical for that supply job position, and that physical, 10 years in, they found my trait. No problems. You shouldn't have any issues. And then a few years later, I collapsed. Almost died from that. And so taking that negative experience of my health, and then finding out that, oh, wait, if we're born for a reason, then how does the sickle cell trait play a part in that? And then I found that whole life in the Bible of God showing me that this is what you were born with, and this is why.
True.
The military was to get you where you are right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of us don't realize that. A lot of us, again, my identity, I can tell you looking back now, was in my rank. So my depression and anxiety, a lot of that stemmed from the basketball identity, then to the soldier, and then, like I said, when I became an E5, it was like that pride that comes with that and all that responsibility. For me, it was like, and so when that uniform was taken away, it was like I didn't know who I was as a person. So I like to share that because a lot of our veteran community, we lose ourselves in that uniform. Does your daughter keep you balanced between those two worlds?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, she definitely does. And I mean, it goes both ways. I bought her a set of OCPs. So sometimes we're walking around in our military uniform. But yeah, definitely she keeps me grounded. She keeps me humble. She keeps me a positive person for sure. And the work that I do too in the community as a medic, being in that medical field definitely adds to that humbling experience. Being more of a servant than anything.
Let's touch on that community piece. I saw that you are part of
LULAC?
Yeah.
Yes.
So talk about that.
The League of United Latin American Citizens.
Yeah.
I am the president of the California LULAC's Veterans Council for Southern California. Even though we're the only Veterans Council in California. So we work with and represent veterans in the Hispanic community all throughout California. And even at the national level, we have a national vice president for military and veterans affairs now.
What? We're going to come back to that. Joe, let's play that Spanish sickle cell trait PSA that I have. This is the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio, 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Shout out to Worcester County. Hey, I'm Sergeant First Class Farron Dozier.
Yeah.
I'm here at the military base, and I have the sickle cell trait. Now, why I got involved is I experienced what they call sickle cell trait exertion. And I was doing the Army physical fitness test, the 2-mile run, and when I got done, I collapsed. A lot of soldiers and athletes have been dying at football fields and running track, and the family members have no idea that they have the sickle cell trait gene or that it's a trigger. So my purpose is to mobilize the community so we can find out what's in your genes. How will life be if we could prevent another child from being born with sickle cell trait or disease? And if a child was born with the trait or disease, that the family members would have the education, awareness, and resources in every city that they lived in. So tune into our webinar series and find out what's the count.
What's the count? What's the count? What's the count?
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes. In moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Calmago.com to learn how you can get Calmago through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
Muchos de nosotros nos vemos afectados por la enfermedad de células falciformes a diario y un número creciente simplemente no nos damos cuenta. Los impactos de esta enfermedad afectan a todas las personas y en especialmente a las personas de color y con antecedentes diversos. Estar en servicio conmigo y con los demás a medida que creamos una mayor conciencia sobre cómo identificar y dirigir el tratamiento de los rasgos de células falciformes y ayudar a las familias a saber cómo superar el trastorno de células falciformes. www.onsct.org. Gracias por su atención.
Welcome back to the Farron Dozier Show on KCA Radio 106.5 FM, 1050 AM. Also, the Military Broadcast Radio Network. We got a few minutes left, man. I actually asked for a song, a couple of songs. You gave me this one for your mental toughness. I'm going to play just a couple of bars of that. What comes to mind when you hear that?
A lot of, the whole song in general, the message is, standing on your own. You don't need to seek validation from others, from things. It's, you're your own validation. You're your biggest support. You're your biggest cheerleader. A lot of people say you're your biggest critic.
Yeah.
But it's working with that, all of that, and shaping that strength to continue that personal development.
I appreciate you for saying that, man, because losing sight of our own self-love happens early in age.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I was in my 50s when I rediscovered my self-love, self-worth, self-esteem, self-affirmation, like from within, though.
Yes.
Not from the intrapersonal relationship that you have to deal with yourself first, not the interpersonal, like what we're having here. I think it's, not that I think, but I know it's so important for us as human beings to tap back into that, because if you don't, you could be looking for that validation outside, and it's outside of you. It's only temporary, even in that person. I think a lot of times we get married because of those kind of reasons, because we're looking for that other half of us when that's not really
Yeah, that's
how
not
it
not
looks.
how it goes.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest things that I talk to with my girlfriend now is, you know, I'm bettering myself for you in the same way that I want you to better yourself for me. We're two wholes
Yes.
coming together. We're
Yeah.
not two halves.
Yeah.
We're not two people with works in progress.
Yeah.
Even though we're always going to be works in progress.
Oh yeah, till we check out.
But you know, for me, that self-love definitely came back once and it was when I graduated basic training. It wasn't even AIT yet.
Really?
It was basic training, knowing that at the age that I was, you know, 30. Here I am at 30 years old,
Yeah.
a single dad, joining one of the toughest organizations on the planet,
Yeah.
and succeeding. You know?
1% of the population we are.
Yeah.
1% of the
1%.
population we are. So yes, that's right. Not
And,
everybody
and
can handle
even
that.
my experience with basic, you know, I had some injuries that I had to deal with,
Yeah.
and the risk of being recycled and
Yeah.
pushing through those injuries.
So you know what that feels like.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I
yeah,
had
man.
a really bad fracture to my left tibia, and my metatarsals in my foot.
Oh yeah, you know that life.
And then not wanting to report it, you know, trying to muscle through.
That's what we're trained to do.
That's
though.
what we're trying to do. But it took me marching in tears for my teammates to be like, no, you're gonna go to sick call and you're gonna get this taken care of. And thankfully, you know, I graduated with the people I went in. I didn't get recycled. I pushed through, and you know, continued to deal with some of those issues when I got to AIT.
Yeah.
And having that support.
All right, we got. That's it? Are you serious? Well, this is your. That goes to our last comment right there. This one here, you said is for your mom.
Yes.
Maya's?
It's called Guatemala. Guatemala.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is, love that. Hey. What do you want to say about moms, man, real quick?
She's been my biggest fan, my biggest supporter throughout all my life. You know, we've had a lot of ups and downs, but you know, we've been able to stick together, and you know, being the oldest of six, you know, and then having our dad leave. Unfortunately, he was deported,
Oh, wow.
and so having to take on that responsibility, it was rough, but we pushed through and we did it. You know, so she's a trooper. Definitely.
And lastly, for Pops, what do you want to say about Pops when you hear that guitar?
Well, in his youth, he was just always, you know, very high energy, headstrong. You know, learn the values of hard work from him. For the time that we did have him with us, you know, that man never gave up, never had a sick day. Even when he was sick, he would still push through, go to work, because he knew his responsibilities. You know?
Shouts out to Pops.
Yeah.
Those of you listening to it, and we appreciate you, man. Thank you for hanging out
No,
with us
thank
tonight,
you.
man. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate you. Shouts out to Lisa for,
Yes.
for that connection.
And please check out, you know, LULAC.org or CaliforniaLULAC.org. I know we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but
but we will. You'll be back.
Yes.
We got some more conversations left. All right, this is the Farron Dozier Show and the Military Broadcast Radio Network. Shout us out, what's the count? Thanks for listening in. We'll be back next week.
Some of us still carry the burden of battle. It threatens to drown us in our everyday lives. In battle, we had our weapons and combat gear to keep us safe, to keep us confident. But when we returned home, we were not armed with weapons and gear to cope with our own minds. I was lucky to find my combat gear, my mental weapon, and it's called Calmago. Calmago is a drug-free device that allows you to achieve calm in less than 3 minutes in moments of anxiety, stress, anger, panic, or insomnia, not with medication, but rather by activating the parasympathetic nervous system through breathing regulation and multisensory stimulation. A recent study has shown that Calmago decreases PTSD and anxiety levels in veterans, helping those who are suffering and having a long-lasting effect. Visit Comigo.com to learn how you can get Comigo through the VA or with a special veterans discount code.
KCAA.